What's up, YouTube? Hi, and welcome to this week's rendition of Gods Unchained Market Watch. I'm your host, Juju, and today we'll be going over all of the notable market movements in the Gods Unchained ecosystem. So, with all the turmoil going on with foreign affairs, the market is surprisingly not as volatile as I thought, but it's still pretty volatile. We do see a couple of dips in some of the key cards like Demo Gorgon and also like Highborn Knight, Apocalypse Now. Sulfuric Rain is surprisingly staying stable, but lots of cards have dipped in value, which is understandable due to the state of the world right now. Um, in addition to that, Token Trove has also started to charge service fees for listing cards. That is also inflating the price as well. I don't know. I don't know when exactly they implemented it. I think they probably just implemented it within the last couple of days. Definitely before, uh, definitely before today. But yeah, that's for the most part something to take note of as well. So if you do notice, cards being inflated in price or maybe cards going down in price, that's also likely a factor. But regardless, we do have a lot of things going on for today. As you guys have been staring at my Google screen for a while, as you can see, it's all Gods Unchained, Google Slides, Google Docs, all that stuff. But we're just going to go ahead and get started with the cards. Before we do that, Armor 2.0. I'm not going to release that video anymore because, well, the devs decided not to release it to go live. I thought that was a good move. Honestly, Armor's a little problematic in the sense where anything over 2 makes the card pretty broken unless that card has like 1 or 2 health. Probably 2 health would probably be the most you can have with 2 armor. But in terms of like in terms of the change, I felt like it was a good thing to do. If you're changing armor right before a core fresh reset release, that's going to be a little problematic just because it's going to mess up all the balancing that you've been trying to achieve over the past couple of weeks for this core set refresh. We also went over the new balance patch in our last video, and I have a feeling that a lot of the balance patch changes done this week or this past week were geared towards preparing for that core set refresh release. Try saying that 5 times fast. Regardless, we should definitely be on the watch for any notable changes or any leaks. Some leaks have already happened within the core set refresh. Copper Pitch leaked a card. Someone from C9 leaked a card too, but I know Fake Muse is also doing it, doing one today in a couple hours actually at the time of filming. So be on the lookout for that one as well. But as the core set starts being revealed, I'm going to be doing a comprehensive overview of what's going on within the core set. Sorry, Pineapple. Shout out to you. We're going to hold off on that video because I really just want to do one video when everything is finalized so that from there we can have some kind of evergreen content on the channel that can help new viewers, old viewers, new players, old players, all that good stuff. Yeah. So that was a long intro. With that being said, let's begin. So first off is our only death card for today, and this is going to be Greed Banestrider. I put this card out. There wasn't a lot of price movement on the east side of things, but there were a couple of increased activity going on within the week. This could be because of buyouts, but I did want to touch over this card because I do think this card is quite good. It's a 3 mana 4/4, and that's pretty good for the stat line. Of course, having 4 health still means it's vulnerable to stuff like Canopy Barrage and Star Shard Bolt, but 4/4 is a pretty decent stat line for a 3 mana card. It's also another card, so there's some synergy there with the death side of things, as well as it dealing 3 damage to your god. So we went over Ataraxia last week. This card can also help in proccing Ataraxia or getting your values worth. But I don't think you'd be running this in an Ataraxia deck, to be honest. You're just running this for the stats and maybe using it to help proc cards like, I don't know, that have that, if you're below 15 health, this card does X, those type of cards. With that being said, this card is pretty good. I'm looking forward to testing this card out in future decks once the core set gets released, because the new core set gets released, because I do think this card might have some value depending on what the death class has. Cool, moving on. So moving on, we have Orfeo, Champion of Deception. We've gone over this card before in the past. It's a 1-mana 1/1, backline deadly, hidden for 1 turn. After you play a card, play this creature on your board if it's in your hand. It's free tempo, pretty much. You get to, because it has backline deadly and hidden. Backline and hidden make it so that unless your opponent has like AoE or targeted removal, well, it can't even have targeted removal because of the hidden effect, but it makes this card pretty safe in the early turns, right? So the fact that it has Deadly 2 means it's a free trade with one of your opponent's minions, granted if they don't have armor, and you pretty much just play it when you play a card and you have it in your hand, which is nice if you open with it. It's a little weaker when you draw into it, but for the most part, I think this card is solidly good. It's on a steady increase in price in ETH, not too crazy, but we do see, look at this, we do see a little bit of a consolidation here at this like 104 price point. Now it's at 116 because of the token trove. What's the word? Service fee? They're charging 2%, something like that. Anyways, just something to keep an eye on. Moving on, we have Hierophant Selenius. This card has also moved up in ETH for a little bit. This is 5 mana 4/3. Your other creatures gain whenever this creature damages an opponent's god. Copy a random card in your opponent's deck and add it to your hand. This can easily be a refill for your hand, especially if you're playing an aggro version of like a hidden, or if you're playing an aggro hidden rush deception deck. Maybe you have a board full of creatures, turn 5, you drop this card, have your creatures attack and refill your hand. Seems pretty plausible in my opinion. 4/3 is not a good stat line, but you're not really playing it for the stats. You're playing it to refill your board with your opponent's cards, which is kind of memey. Next up, we have Kidnapper. 6 mana 1/6 deadly. After Kidnapper attacks a creature, pull the attacked creature into your hand. This card's a little weird because it has 6 health, but it only has... the combination of its effect is weird. It's deadly, right? So you attack a creature and it dies, but if it survives somehow, you put the creature back into your hand, and you take your opponent's monster. It's literally kidnapping a creature. It makes sense. I don't know why you would play this though, but anyways, you do see a buyout here, or an increase in volume. Sorry, I shouldn't say buyout anymore. You see 8 copies bought at a price point at 0.0059 ETH. Very interesting stuff. Shadow of Lethenon. At the end of your turn, this creature gains hidden. At the start of your turn, this creature deals 1 damage to the opposing god. This card is really good, especially if you can buff it. Yeah, open up Shadow of Lethenon, drop a shield bearer on it. You get a 2/2 that can attack for free every turn unless your opponent has like a random AoE effect, like a Canopy Barrage or something that can snipe it. But this card is very good. I think it's a must include in Hidden Rush Deception decks, but I've seen some lifts that don't run it, which is kind of weird, but I mean, to each his own. 45 copies were bought on February 23rd, and you see a slight spike in price. Let's see how that converts in US dollars. In US dollars, I mean, you do see the dip. Someone bought the dip here and then came back up. So, very interesting card. Great pickup if you're looking to build up your Deception collection. Next up, we have Sleep Dart. This is your 2 mana spell. Target creature goes to sleep. It gains burn 3. Right here, you see 137 copies are bought. Damn, that's crazy. But then you see it's consolidating back to this regular price point. Anyways, I like the card. Target creature goes to sleep, gains burn +3. If it has less than 3 health or 3 health, then it dies pretty much, unless your opponent has like an anti-sleep card in their hand. But yeah, it's honestly a very good card, and you get your mana's worth in value with this card. Next up, we have Needlefang Chameleon. Hidden for 1 turn, creatures damaged by this creature get burn +1. It's a 1 mana 2/2 wild. This card spiked up during the week. It's very interesting to see the increase in price. But I mean, I kind of see the logic because it is a 1 mana 2/2, which is pretty standard, but it also has hidden. So, you know, there's a good chance it's staying alive for the next turn. Also, what differentiates itself from the other 2/2 creatures with hidden, the 1 mana 2/2 creatures with hidden, it gives creatures that it damages burn +1, and that could have some sort of effect. It's actually pretty good value for a 1 mana card. But you do see a price spike here. I don't see an increase in volume though, which is kind of interesting. But there was a small buyout here, and you do see a spike. So very interesting stuff. Next up, we have Scylla, Carnival Ringleader. This card was buffed. This card specifically wasn't buffed, but the Shimmer Scales it turns into was, because instead of it being a 5/5 with flank, it's now a 5/5 with hidden, which is good. Yeah, it's something else too, but yeah, I think that's what it was. Anyways, we do see a price spike here because of its buff, and it's consolidated back down to its normal price levels. Next up, we have Merchant Prince. Alright, so this card is very interesting. Roar, reduce the cost of all cards in your hand that did not start in your deck by 1. 2/4, 4 mana. It's a guild creature, so there's some guild synergies in there as well. We do see some interesting. The volume is very interesting in a way where some people think it's good and it gets bought up in some days, and then other days it doesn't get bought up, as you can see here. I personally like the card. I think any card that can discount mana is worth taking a look into, because mana is such an important resource in Gods Unchained, and you want to get your mana's worth in stats, right? So this card has some potential here, and you can also reduce it further with that 3 mana guild card that reduces guild minions in your hand. So that could be a possible thing to look into. Anyways, it's still at this level right here, the 0.0001232 ETH, but it could come back up. I'm not too sure, but I did want to note this card in our deception section because I thought the activity was very interesting. Maybe there's some manipulation going on there. Toast to Peace saw an increase in volume today, or not today, last week. 6 mana, pull each creature from the board into their owner's hand. Your creatures returned this way have their cost reduced by 2. So there's some interesting applications here, especially if you want to reuse some broken battle cry, or sorry, I shouldn't say battle cry, some roar effects, right? You play a 2 mana creature with roar, play that card, then following turn play Toast to Peace. You get to clear your opponent's board, and they have to play minions back, but you get to replay your minions at a discounted cost, which is a lot nicer. It's a very good tempo play in my opinion. Anyways, for the cost of 1 card, because it doesn't really destroy anything. But we do see a price spike here. It's gone back down, but it's an interesting card to look at. Next up, we have Helm Hustler. Alright, this is your 3 mana 2/4 backline roaring ability. Steal an enemy creature's armor and add it to this creature. Then deal this creature's armor as damage to that enemy. We did see an increase in volume because of the balance patch changes. It spiked all the way up here and then it went back down. Personally, I don't think the card is too impactful. Maybe if armor cards become very, very, very common in the meta, and I'm not just saying like Guild Enforcer plus Polyhymnia common, but I'm saying like there's a dedicated deck to armor, or each deck runs like, I don't know, 4 to 5 creatures that run armor, then maybe this card will see play, but for the most part it's very niche. It's a tech choice, and you only do it in certain metagames. So yeah, and it can't even attack, right? So the stats are pretty useless, other than the stats aren't useless, but it can't attack. So it's only used for cards against armor, which is interesting. Next up, we see a little bit of a buyout for Gorilla Sabotage. This is your 3 mana, deal 2 damage to a random enemy creature. If it survives, pull it from the board into your hand. So this is interesting because for 3 mana, you do 2 damage to a creature. If it survives, you give it back to your opponent, and then they have to play that creature again if they wanna use it, right? And then in Gods Unchained, when cards get damaged and they get put back into their hand, they keep the damage. So I could see this being like a tempo removal type play, and that's fine. I think maybe if you use it on something that's more than 3 mana, you can get your mana's worth, but I would prefer to kill the minion outright. But I mean, this goes around Polyhymnia too. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting card. This is from the Genesis set, so there's some investment implication there. But we do see a little bit of a buyout happen on the 27th. Next up, we have Ring of the Siren. 4 mana, relic, ability, give a creature order 1, and remove 1 durability from this relic. I like this card. It's spiked over the buffs. It's consolidated back down to its normal price, of course, but I do like the card in terms of giving your creature order +1. It's a really easy way to proc an order effect, maybe for your Hollow, maybe for your Lantern Bound Fae, maybe for, you know, that 3 mana 2/2 that gets 2/2 every time it loses order. So very interesting card. The only thing is it's 4 mana, so it's definitely if you want to play it on curve, you're dedicating your entire turn, so you won't be adding too much tempo on board the turn you do this. But I mean, it's not a bad card. Very interesting for order decks. Cool. Now we're moving on to the Magic cards. Okay, so first up we have Clone. 2 mana, copy the lowest cost creature in your hand. Of course, this is for Portal Wrangler, but there are other cards that there could be other viable targets that can be worth this card, or worth for this card. This card is very good for OTK decks. I'm sure there's an OTK that hasn't been found that could be played with this card. I know Copper Pitch has been experimenting with OTKs in Stormfield, so maybe he's included this card in his deck as well. But anyways, the card is spiked all the way to 0.06 ETH and has gone back down. Let's see where it's at dollar wise. It's $144. Oh my god. Before the spike it was 101, 102, spiked at 170, 172. Now it's back to 140. Very interesting. Let's see if this will hold or not. Next up we have Merlin. Okay, I like this card. So this is actually a card when I first started playing the game that I was really into, because it reminded me of Emperor Thaurissan from Hearthstone, and that card, what ended up happening with that card is that card was so good they had to retire it from the core set. Or I don't know if it was core set, it might have been like Black Rock Mountain, something like that. Anyways, this card, 6 mana, 4/6. At the end of your turn, reduced by 1 the cost of spells in your hand that cost less than your total unlocked mana gems. The only thing that makes this weaker than Emperor Thaurissan is Emperor Thaurissan was 6 mana, but Gods Unchained and Hearthstone, the mana system were different, right? So while Emperor Thaurissan took only 6 turns, this took about 7 to play. And for a 4/6, I don't know if that's worth it. I mean, it possibly can be. Especially with the amount of tempo it can gain you, because when you play this card on 6, if you have a hand full of spells, like say you have 5 cards in hand, all of them spells, all of them less than 6 mana, you're effectively reducing your hand by 5 mana, and that's really good. It gives you a lot of flexibility with your spells. We do see a little bit of an increase in volume here, and it's getting back to its normal price point. Let's see where that is. It's about $87, $89, and now it's at 93. So I do like this card. I think it's very strong, and it's a Genesis set legendary. I think it's a decent investment. I mean, this is an investment advice, of course, but it's a decent card to spend on if you're looking to build your Magic collection. Next up, we have our good old friend, Equivalent Exchange. 3 mana, obliterate 2 cards in your hand, pick 1, unlock 2 mana locks, and draw 2 cards. I still like this card. I think it's good in ramp. I actually really like it in ramp. You do have to build your deck around it for a little bit, though. So if you play this card, you're basically... You need to dedicate your whole deck to cards that are like worth more than 5 mana or 5 mana or above, right? I mean, you don't have to, but in order to really take advantage of this card, because you're discarding too, your draws need to be really powerful and usable, right? So when you play this card on turn 3 at 4 mana, or turn 3 at 3 mana, it gets you to 5 mana, so that you can play the next turn. You can play a 5 mana card when your opponent can only play like 3 to 4 mana cards. So yeah, I still like this card. I think in ramp decks it needs to be included, but it needs to be included in a dedicated ramp deck, not a ramp deck that kind of wants to ramp but doesn't really. I don't know. I just think it's very the effect. The effect is very strong for a ramp card, because typically when you play a ramp card, you're only ramping 1 mana a turn, right? But for this card, you ramp 2 mana per turn, and that's very, very good at the expense of your hand. And I mean, I went over this in the video that I used to explain why I think this card is undervalued, but the cards that you discard are more likely going to be cards that you don't use, right? So say you use a ramp deck, you open with, I don't know, you open with a 6 mana card, a 7 mana card, Equivalent Exchange, and a Sip of Elixir. Turn 1, you Sip of Elixir. Turn 2, you Equivalent Exchange. Or turn 1, you Bag of Tricks, Sip of Elixir. Turn 2, you play Equivalent Exchange. Discard the cards that you can't play, and then from there rely on your future draws to play stronger cards. And if you build your deck right, it should be able to work, and it has worked for ramp decks that I do. So I do like the card, and it has late game potential too, right? Because if you're running this in a ramp deck late game, you get to, instead of discarding your powerful ramp cards that you can play now, you can discard the cards that you don't need to play, which are the cards that unlock mana locks. Because if you already have cards that, if you already have unlocked mana, you don't need to ramp. So you can discard, you can pitch your, like, I don't know, Mana Toad, you can pitch your Sip of Elixir, any extra copies that you don't need once you're already ramped, in order to draw 2 cards, right? Because you're not trying to ramp any further. Anyways, that's my spiel about this card. We do see an increase in price in ETH. Let's see that. Yep, we do see an increase in price. It's going back to its old levels. Let's see if it goes up. Maybe there's some new ramp cards in the core refresh set. Cool. Next up, we have Form of Unity. This is your 3 mana, deal 1 damage to a character for each of your creatures on the board. If you control 5 or more creatures, deal 9 damage instead. This is definitely correlating because of the Stormfield buff and the amount of OTK implications this could possibly have with Portal Wrangler or any other 1 mana. I've seen like Card Shark versions of Stormfield. And that could be a thing for sure. Card is very good. You get your mana's worth in damage if you can get a full board, for sure. Synergizes with Rod of Rodent too. It's no Corpse Explosion, but it's 2 mana less, so I'll give it a pass. Oh, and by the way, y'all, about the core set refresh, I know there are going to be I know that cards have been like released in terms of like PTR stuff, but as far as like finalized versions, we don't know, and I kind of want to go over those cards once they're finalized, because it's better that way for me. Yeah, okay, cool. So next up we have O Fortuna. This is your 8 mana, deal 4 damage to a target enemy creature and its god. Give protected and ward to your god. Draw 4 cards. This card is amazing. For 8 mana, this is pretty good. It reminds me of Ultimate Infestation for Druid in Hearthstone, but I digress. Anyways, so we do see a buyout happening here. I think there might be a way to use this card with Scholar of Power. I'm not too sure yet, but it just screams Scholar of Power. Get a bunch of spell damage, Scholar of Power, discard O Fortuna, and then from there, do something with the card. Yeah, but this card is awesome because it's a lot of value. The only thing it doesn't do is summon a creature, but I mean you can't do everything, right? Cool. Moving on. Next up we have Recursion. 2 mana. Add 2 copies of a random spell from your opponent's voids into your hand. We do see an increase in ETH right here. I think it's alright. It's a 2 mana draw 2 from, and then if depending on when you play it, you can, if your opponent plays like high value spells, you can definitely take those high value spells, but I don't know. Best thing you can do is possibly get 2 copies of Canopy Barrage, 2 copies of Star Shard Bolt. Oh my god, if you do use this and end up getting a final draft from a Demetrios, that's not bad as well. But anyways, I think the card is too conditional for me to like, though, because it implies that your opponent has to play a card that your deck wants, and what if it's not, like, what if your opponent's spells are useless against, like, your opponent, you know? But I mean, at best, you can use this card to copy your opponent's removal, and then from there, like, go off with it. It's decent. It's decent. Cool. Arcane Transcendent saw a little bit of a spike earlier this week. 3 mana, 3/3 Roar. Choose a spell that costs no more than your total unlocked mana gems. Reduce its cost by 2. I actually really like this card because it synergizes so well with all the 2 mana spells in the Magic class. You can play this card, discount a 2 mana spell, play the 2 mana spell for free. That's essentially 5 mana's worth of like cards and for 3 mana, and that's pretty good in my opinion. And you get a 3/3 body. It's not like Warp Engineer where it's a 2 mana 1/3, which is kind of underwhelming, but the 3/3 is pretty decent. It's not like amazing, but yeah, this card cheats out tempo. And remember, like I always say, any card that discounts mana should be given a like closer look because of how important mana is in Gods Unchained. So this card is very good. I do see it coming back down in price, but I mean, it's a solid card. Stormfield. 2 mana, give spell boost to each of your creatures. Yeah, there are a lot of OTK implications with this card. Now that it's 2 mana, it's a lot cheaper to use. It's easier to play. Giving spell boost to a field of Rotted Rodents, a field of Portal Wranglers, maybe a field of Card Sharks. Very good, very good. And it enables cheap spells to do a lot of damage, right? And that's kind of what you want in an OTK deck. Just, you know, 1 turn to do a bunch of damage and hopefully kill off your opponent. Next up, we have Rotted Rodents. This is also, you do see a correlation here. It's also a Stormfield card. A card that synergizes well with Stormfield. It's 3 mana 1/2 relic. After you cast a spell that costs 3 or less, summon a 1/1 rat. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's not a bad card. It's not a bad card. If your opponent doesn't have relic removal, it's just an endless source of 1/1s, right? It's kind of like Necroceptor in that sense, except Necroceptor has that, like, when a zombie dies, your opponent loses 2 favor clause. So you got to be careful playing this card because you can give your opponent a lot of favor if they have a means to deal with a field. Next up, we have Form of Wisdom. We do see a little bit of a buyout here with this card as well. This is a 2 mana draw card. If it's a spell that costs 3 or less, reduces cost to 0. Yeah, I like this card. For the most part, it's something you definitely have to try to build your deck around because you want to hit the discount most of the time. Otherwise, it's a little underwhelming. You do get to draw a card for 2 mana, but there's so many classes, or there's so many cards in the Magic class that allow you to draw a card for 1. So you do kind of have to build around it, but If you hit the discount, that's great. It feels so good playing this card and hitting it on a Vow of Learning because that's just value. Oh my god, it just I got a little hot. Got a little hot here. But yeah, anyways, it's a decent card. We do see some activity here, probably because of all the Stormfield OTK shenanigans. It's a good card, especially if you need to draw, right? So, decent. Next up, we have Mistress Scythia for the nature cards. All right, so this is your 3 mana 2/1. Destroy all cards in your deck would cost 2 or less. We do see an increase in activity here because Copper Pitch leaked one of the core set refresh cards a couple of days back. It's a wisp that if it gets summoned, you give it +1/+1, and then you create a copy of that card and then put it in your deck. So there are some implications where you obviously draw the wisp first, plays a Scythia, you play the wisp, and then the wisp shuffles back. Because you destroyed your deck through Scythia, you draw the wisp, you play it again, and so on and so forth. That could be a very interesting thing to see. But yeah, it's definitely a card. It's definitely a card to like look for sure. So regardless, very, very interested to see how this card plays out after the core set refresh gets released. Dionysus the Bountiful. 9 mana, roar, add 7 random nature cards to your hand. Set their cost to 1, deal 4 damage to each enemy character. This card is good. Very good. You pretty much play this card when you can afford to have 7 random nature cards in your hand. You don't need to do that all the time, especially if you're like in a pinch and you need to summon a minion. But I mean, if you last long enough to play this card, you're probably doing really good for yourself. Anyways, great refill on board, deal 4 damage to each enemy creature, so it's a board clear as well, or it can be a board clear. Yeah, this card is a pretty good finisher in control nature decks, which we will see more control nature builds or control nature in the future. I think a lot of the nature cards in these buyouts or in this market watch are actually control nature, geared towards control nature, so you'll see what I mean. Next up, we have Gorilla Gardener. 8 mana, backline, blitz, overkill. After this creature destroys an enemy creature, summon a 1/1 vibrant fruit. That's really good because it has overkill, it has blitz, you summon it, kill a minion. If it kills another minion, you get 2 vibrant fruit, and on top of that, you get backline. So your opponent has to go through the vibrant fruits first before they can attack the Gorilla Gardener. And if they destroy the Gardener fruit, or if they destroy the vibrant fruits, the Gardener will most likely get buffed because it's the strongest minion, right? So we do see an increase in price, definitely. It's definitely geared towards more control nature builds, for sure. But I mean, you can run this as a top end and mid range. I don't think it's a bad option, for sure. But yeah, great card. Next up, we see Black Rhino. I think we went over this last week too. It's 6 mana, 5/5, confused, roar, pick 1. This creature gets 2 strength and twin strike, or 3 health and frontline. Lots of good stats for 6 mana. We do see a little bit of a spike here, and it's currently staying at this like 0.00140 ETH range. Let's see if it dips back down even more. Okay, next up, continuing the control nature trend. Enchanted Vines, deal 4 damage to 4 random creatures, add a random nature card to your hand. So yeah, this will clear the board for sure. Unless your opponent has like more than 4 creatures, which is possible, definitely possible. But it's for 1 card, you kill off 4 creatures, and that's really good. And it replaces itself, so that's not bad. That's not bad at all. Be on the lookout for these control nature decks, because I feel it coming. Frenzied Ritual, we also went over this last time. It did spike, but it's a 4 mana, deal 12 to a random enemy creature and a random friendly creature, add a random nature card to your hand. So the downside of this card is you get to destroy your creature. You have to destroy your creature in the process, but on the upside, that's really you can that's easy really that's really easy to bypass. Sorry, talking is hard. And 12 damage for 4 mana is very good. That's your nature. That's your mana's worth. If it didn't have any other effect, then this card would still be good. But the fact that it replaces itself with a random nature card makes it over the top. Yeah, it's a great card, and I'm not surprised of the price increase. Cool. Next up, we have Sage of Renewal, which is probably why we're starting to see all of these like late top end nature cards seeing an increase in price, because Sage of Renewal is actually a very good card. It's regen 2, but you're not playing it for the regen 2. You're playing it because you refresh 4 mana and you delve 4 mana worth of nature spells. So not only are you getting spells, which are typically very strong in nature, but you on top of that, you get a 7 mana 6/6 body. So you play the 7 mana 6/6, you refresh 4 mana. Whatever spells you get, you can play that turn, and they could possibly be very good. What if you get a Frenzied Ritual? You can thing. And the fact that you delve those spells is very good, because it's not just random, right? You get to choose accordingly based on, your options. And that has positive implications. I'm expecting to see more of this card in the future. Veil Warden Minotaur, 5 mana 5/5. Afterlife, heal your god for 4. If this completely heals your god and a random nature card to your hand. We do see an increase in volume lately. I do think the card is good. It's 5 mana 5/5, which is decent for a 5/5. It's also wild, so there's some synergy there with all the wild cards. It also synergizes with Ominous Burrow, which can be a good thing, and it replaces itself if it completely heals your god. So it's a 5 mana 5/5 that can replace itself, and if it doesn't, it's healing your god for 4, which is pretty nice. Yeah, we do see an increase in price here. I'm interested to see where the activity takes it, because although there is an increased activity, it is also a core card, so it's really easy to obtain. Xanth of Tartessos, up to our war cards. So this is your 3 mana. At the end of your turn, give a random creature in your hand X strength, where X is equal to the number of creatures in your hand. This card can be very good, because you get to buff a card. I mean, you can buff a Herdicist, you can buff a Tavern Brawler, maybe you buff the boat, the 4 mana 3/4. There are endless possibilities. What if you buff an Aeneas, or what if you buff like a Grendel, right? There are lots of possibilities for this card. Synergizes well with all the protected minions. And if your opponent doesn't deal with it, this can make your creatures very big. So it's a threat that your opponent has to deal with right away. If it doesn't, it's just going to continue to pay off its value in mana. But we do see a buyout here. 15 copies. 21 copies. It's currently at the 0.016422 ETH range, which is about $48. Wow, $48. Yeah, that's a pretty huge increase in price, if you ask me. So, yeah, not surprised. Okay, next up we have Reinforcements. This card is slowly going down. We'll see if it holds next Market Watch, but for the most part, you know my spiel about this card. It's 3 mana, draw 2, and if you're looking for cards that cost less than 2 health, this card is good, because it thins out your deck, but it also finds cards that you need. So it could get you that Leviathan Hunter, it could get you that Tavern Brawler, can get you a Boil Blood Outlaw if you're looking for that as well. There are probably other 1 mana cards or 2 mana cards that are going to be useful in finding. So yeah, if you have any ideas what this card is or what this card can pull, put it in the comment section below, because yeah, this card has a lot of potential. Next up we have Dead Man's Flail. This is your 4 mana 3/2 relic, God Blitz. At the end of each turn, deal 1 damage to your god. Afterlife, deal 1 damage to each creature. So the fact that it's a 4 mana card that has God Blitz is very good, but there are also implications. I mean, there's also like the Ares Blade. I can't remember the full name, but it's 3 mana 3/2, same stats, 1 less mana, and has God Blitz. But I mean, this can proc some interesting things, right? Deal 1 damage to your god. If there's an effect that procs when you take damage, this can possibly be a good card to proc that effect with. Also, the Afterlife, deal 1 damage to each creature. If you're playing something like that mountain worm thing, the Great Scale Worm, it's a war card. I'm blanking on the name, but anyways, if you play that, it gets injured, you get to double its strength. That could be an interesting thing to look at. But I mean, it's a decent option. 4 mana, 3/2 with God Blitz. I love relics with Blitz and God Blitz because you can act right away, and it's a lot of good removal for value. So if you're missing like a magic missile launcher and you need a budget card to help with whatever deck you're running, this card can be a proxy. Although you might as well just play like the 3/2 with God Blitz, the 3 mana 3/2 with God Blitz, because that's better in my opinion. It's cheaper too. Next up, we have Deadly Arsenal, which experienced a little bit of a increase in ETH price. I mean, not too much. It's pretty minimal, but something worth reporting. I like the card. You get 3 stats worth for 1 mana. It can definitely see play in a lot of different decks, especially aggro war. So sick. Onto our neutral cards. Something spicy. I mean, this is something I should have touched like the past couple weeks, but we have a Citadel of Gods in the marketplace. We haven't seen any orders or any orders that were checked, at least on Token Trove, but we have 1 copy for 1,515 ETH, which might be a little bit too much. I don't know. Mythic cards are interesting in the sense where you can't really play them. I mean, you can play them, but you can't really play them in tournaments, and it's a lot of value, even though it is a 1 of 1 though. So that could be interesting. If Gods Unchained gets really big down the line, this card is definitely a card to look at. Although right now at its current price point, I don't think it's proven that it's worth 1,500 ETH. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's proven that it's worth 1,500 ETH, but I mean, I digress. Like, there are people out there with tons of money that could invest in this card and could possibly see like a lot of things. I'm just a guy on YouTube making videos about market watches. So with that being said, very interesting stuff. Spiral Golem. This is your 6 mana 8/10. At the start of your turn, this creature attacks a random enemy creature. It's also an Atlantean, so there's some synergy there. But we do see a little bit of a buyout happen February 27th and 28th. The reason being, I want to say it's because there's a Control War deck that went 25 wins with no Demogorgons this past weekend, and you'll be able to see it on GU decks, but this card was included in the deck. And I think it's a good card for 6. It's like an Underbrush board, but 6 mana and better stats, right? So, well, of course it has to stay alive for the next turn, because Underbrush board procs at the end of a turn, but this card procs at the beginning of your turn. I don't think it can attack again after it attacks through its effect, so that's something to take note of. But 6 mana 8/10 is a very good stat line for 6 mana cards. Like, it's so good. Like, typically you'll see like a 6/6 on 6 mana, but you get 8/10 on 6 mana. It's a pretty big booty, if you ask me. Reflection Elementalist. This is your 5 mana 3/4 ward. Transform a friendly creature into a Reflection Elementalist. 88 copies were bought at an average price of 0.01 ETH. That's a lot of copies. I like the card. The reason why it's 5 mana, you have to transform a friendly creature into another version of this card. So that's a little bit of a cost, but if you have a deck that, I don't know, has a lot of, I guess, minions that are expendable, this card looks really good because it turns into, instead of it being a 5 mana 3/4, it's a 5 mana 6/8, which is kind of what we were talking about the Spiral Golem, except 2 health less. And they have ward, so they're protected by spells or god powers or anything like that, creature effects. This card can be very good, and Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that this card is actually pretty solid, especially in decks like, I don't know, if you want to include it into Zombie Death, I think that's viable. I mean, you don't even have to really use it on an expendable minion, right? I mean, you could probably just, I don't know, a minion that's already dying is a perfect target for this card. You can, I don't know, have this minion have a minion trade with one of your opponent's minions, or have a minion go face, then play the Reflection Elementalist to turn it into another 3/4. Very interesting stuff. We do see a buyout here. Midnight Cat saw a little bit of an increase in price too. This is a 1 mana 2/2 wild with flank. Give a friendly creature flank. 1 mana wild is something to look at because there's a synergy with Crescent Wolf from Divine Order, so that could be a thing. 1 mana 2/2 is pretty standard for 1 mana cards. The fact that it has flank and it gives your opponent, or it gives a friendly creature flank. I mean, I guess it's worth, to be honest. I mean, in aggro decks, flank is a pretty good effect to get you over those Guild Enforcers or any of the taunts. So, I mean, I could totally see this working. Flank also works with getting backline creatures as well. So there's an implication where you summon this creature and then maybe you use it to kill like a hollow or another minion with backline, like an Empyrean Pacifist, something like that. Very interesting stuff. We do see a little bit of a price increase here. Sentinel Princess. This is your 1 mana 2/2 Atlantean. If you control another Atlantean, this gets 1 strength. So for Atlantean beatdown, this is definitely a thing. This is definitely a card to consider. 1 mana 3/2 is a pretty good stat line, in my opinion. So if you can get this effect off regularly, I mean, I could totally see this card being in an Atlantean aggro deck. Something that runs like a Boost Walker and maybe a Wind Up Roller? Yeah, that's a card. Anyways, lots of things, lots of potential here. We do see a little bit of a buyout, and it's up at this price right here. So, yeah, just out of curiosity, what is that? That's like $2. Ooh, big movement. Crazy. And last but not least, we have City Planner. This is your 7 mana 7/7. Summon 2/0/6 Ramparts. The Ramparts also have Taunt. Good card. It's 7 mana 7/7, so you have to wait 8 to 9 turns to play it, of course. Fewer if you're running ramp cards, but you get your stats worth because the ramparts are 0/6 with taunt, so they have to get through a wall first before they get to your 7/7. 2 walls to be specific, and as a total number of stats this card offers. For 7 mana, you get, what's 7 plus 12? 19? It's a 7/19. And yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good in my opinion. Anyways, this card did see a spike in price. Let's see where it's at now. It's at $1. Very, very nice. But yeah. Anyways, that's pretty much it for our market watch. Couple of things to note as well, as I guess future updates for the channel. We will be doing more videos. Life has been picking up for me, so I'm not gonna, I want to be transparent with y'all. Stuff is going on, big life changes are being made, so a lot of my time has been going to that specifically, but I do want to keep providing content for the community. I want to keep doing these market watches, and I want to provide educational videos as well. So that's why you've seen a little bit of a taper off in production in terms of how frequently I post these videos, but they're still in the pipeline. You will see a core set refresh once everything is released and we get a full comprehensive list. I do want to release a video of cards I like. Maybe not a full version because that list is way too long. I like a lot of cards, but maybe I do 5 cards a week, stuff like that. Anyways, y'all, Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to like the video and share the channel, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. And if there's anything that I missed or you wanted to like add to, feel free to like note it down in the comments. Yeah, let's get some conversation going because I love engaging with my audience. Anyways, thank y'all for supporting the channel. Appreciate you guys. Stay safe out there. It's a crazy world. Make sure to tell your loved ones you love them. All right. Later, y'all. Peace and take care.